Um, all right. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Brachas, Pedic Test, Halacha Hey. God willing, concluding, making a siyum today of the entire Masechta. We are going to be learning today Daf Tzadik Dalet. We left off on Daf Tzadik Dalet, Tzadik Gimel Amid Beis, 5 lines before the bottom of the Amid, right? By Tanei, quickly reviewing that the Gemara pointed out, Behemshech to the honor, to the reverence that we have to express by certain behaviors that we do or that we don't do when it comes to Harabayis and the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara began yesterday by bringing a brisa in which we had 2 dinim. One din was that in respect of the Beis Hamikdash, one may not urinate or defecate in the position east-west. In addition to that, we learned that there is also a certain amount of derech you have to give to the southern side. As we explained, the south represents chesed. So, bekitzer, it came out that if a person is urinating or defecating, as the Gemara explained, that has to be in a way where the exposed part of the body should only be towards the north. And this was even by urinating. That is what we learned until now. What the Gemara is going to bring today is a brisa that disagrees with the concept of the need of having to give respect when it comes to urinating. There's no need to give respect. And as we'll see, there's also a disagreement in the second brisa, benegea, to the respect we have to show to the south. Now, what we do have, where there is no disagreement, as we're going to repeat it again today, is the question of this type of respect to the Makom HaMikdash. When is it said? Is it said only when there is a Beis HaMikdash? Is it said even when there is a Beis HaMikdash, only from an area in Yerushalmi from where the Beis HaMikdash could be seen, Minat Soifim V'Lefnim, or Keshitas Rabbi Akiva, which we pass on like Rabbi Akiva, no, that it's not connected to there being a temple standing. It's not even connected to the place of the Beis HaMikdash. It's not connected to Yerushalayim. It's not connected to Eretz Yisrael. It's in any place of the world. Eloma, there is one qualification, that all of these restrictions are only if a person is relieving oneself out there in the field. But if there is even only a wall behind which one is taking care of one's needs, certainly if there's a proper bathroom today where it's completely closed, even Abba Kiva will hold that we do not have any of such restrictions, as we're going to review that inside. Now, we're going to have on Daf Tzadik Dalet more details concerning reverence that needs to be shown to the Makom HaMikdash. We had many details in the Mishnah. We're going to repeat them and add to them in the Braisa. The Gemara is going to tell us that there are shloisha dvarim that gozru bezdin shalamaton v'hiskimu bezdin shalamaylon imahem, and we will see that not only are there 3, we'll see how that's connected to our sugya, but there's even a 4th, and that is that the Chachamim told us that we are allowed to test Hashem, benegeya, giving tzedakah, to become wealthy. Ubechanuni nabazois is something that we are told to do. Normally, you're not allowed to test God. Here we're told, yeah, see if it works. And you'll see that when a person gives a large amount of tzedakah, the poil mamish will become so wealthy as the Gemara is going to explain. Now, when we had the final topic in the Mishnah, and that is concerning when we greet another Jew, that we are to use Hashem's name in the greeting. Nowadays, it's done by saying Shalom Aleichem. The word Shalom, the name Shalom, is one of the names of God. It could be done by saying Hashem imachem, Hashem imachem, and not to say Hashem, to say God's name. And then the responder says Yivorechacha, and also Hashem using God's name. All of that was learned from Boaz. And as the Mishnah began to quote the pasuk, Va'al tavois kizakna imecha, literally meaning, don't shame your mother even though she's old. As the Mishnah used that Boaz was an older person. And one might have thought that just because Boaz told his harvesters, he greeted them by evoking God's name, Hashem Imachem, maybe Boaz is a Alti Yid. And for that, the pasuk says, Al Tavois ki zakna umasecha. That was the drasha we had in the Mishnah. Don't shame someone even though they're getting older. Don't diss them. Old person. No, Boaz knew exactly what he was doing. That was the drasha in the Mishnah. The Gemara is going to give us other drashas that we make from this pasuk. And similarly, when the Mishnah concluded, also concerning evoking God's name when we greet someone, it appears that you're doing something that's prohibited. Nevertheless, we quoted the pasuk in Tehillim that Eis Lasois Lashem Heifeiru Torah Secha, that you can be meifir the Torah, the way we learned in the Mishnah. You can do something that appears to be going against the Torah, but that's the right thing to do because it's correct to use God's name when you greet someone. We're going to have other limudim in the Gemara also from Eis Lasois Lashem Heifeiru Torah Secha, and that's going to lead us into a beautiful piece of Agadata of the chashivus of learning Torah, of the importance of learning Torah every single day. If a person lets go even one day learning Torah, they're not 1 day away from the Torah, they are 2 days away from the Torah, because as we'll see, the Torah is a living being. Ulamashal, two people that are chaverim, that if God forbid, if I choose to walk away from you, and you react by walking away from me, so if I walked away 1 day, 10 parsa, but you also spent the same day walking away from me, we're not 1 day apart, we're 2 days apart, and that's all beautiful and many other in the positive. And ultimately, we're going to have the siyum. We're going to point out a little bit now how the siyum in the Yerushalmi is different than the siyum in the Babli, even though it appears the same. And we'll speak more about this, God willing, Shabbos on Sunday, when we'll make the siyum here in Shul, and then we're going to make the siyum in the Mishpachas Homami. Okay, Chavra Daf Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis, 5 lines from the bottom. So, again, we learned that there has to be a reverence given to the south. Another detail that we didn't speak about yesterday, when a person is defecating, they don't only expose the backside, they also expose their front. But there is a greater exposure in the back than to the front. And therefore, whatever is going to be more exposed, the first Braisa said, not only should not be east-west, should not be south. And number two, that this type of kavod which we give to the south is even by urinating, and this Braisa will argue with both of those points, as we'll see. Tanei says the Gemara, we learned in another Braisa. First of all, the Braisa only speaks about hamesech esrag, only when a person is defecating. In other words, according to this second Braisa, there was no need to give any kavod to anything when a person is urinating. It's not considered disrespect. And even by defecating, the only issue is loyitan panav, not lemizrach, v'achoydev lamaydov. And by the way, according to most commentators, nor vice versa, because there is an exposure on both sides. And like we said, the Makim HaMikdash, the Beis HaMikdash is set up from east to west. The main Shechina is in Maydov. But we don't relieve oneself facing east-west or west-east. Ela l'tzdadim. L'tzdadim means either north or south. So clearly you see that there is no need to give kavod to the south. It can be l'tzdadim. And the whole issue, even Mizrach Ma'arev, is only Mesach Raglov and not by urinating, and indeed, and a Chanami. So we have a difference of opinions. And now, as we learned yesterday, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, whatever kavod you have to give, right? Let's go with the first Braisa, let's go with the second Braisa. Number one, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's only Bishas HaMikdash, only when the temple is actually standing. And even though that the Shechina lo yizazim im kaima, and there is a tremendous amount of reverence. By the way, we pasken all these halachas today. We can give reverence to the Makam HaMikdash, right? Machlekes Rambam and the Ravid, according to the Rambam, you're chayv kadis. If a person walks on the Makam HaMikdash without, when the person is tamei. But these halachas are only b'shas HaMikdash. Rabbi Yossi adds, not only is this type of reverence an obligatory restriction on the person, you have to be mindful, which direction am I in? Not only is it only during the time when the temple is standing, but even then, it's not anywhere in the world. It's not even anywhere in Eretz Yisrael. It's not even anywhere in Yerushalmi. It's only Minat Soifim B'Lefnim. Soifim is a location from which you can see the Makam HaMikdash. If you are further away from that, then you're permitted in any direction. Now, Bakiva is the Machmer. Bakiva Omer, number one, B'chol Makom. B'chol makom means that even outside Eretz Yisrael. And let's go furthermore. Furthermore, he also argues with Rabbi Yehuda. It's not only during the times of the Beis Hamikdash. It's not even during the times of the Beis Hamikdash. And Enochanami so paskins the Rambam based on Rabbi Akiva. However, even Rabbi Akiva has one leniency, which is, when you have to be mindful of this, if a person is relieving oneself in a field out there, if there's even only one wall, not a wall separating you from the Makam HaMikdash. If there's a wall, it's already considered a tznudik place. You have no restrictions. And therefore, kol shchein v'kal v'chomer, if you have a proper home, exactly. Ubelvad b'makim she'ein boy kaisol, and a very good vlad. So look inside the last chared, 2 lines before the bottom of the amid. Ubelmakim she'ein shom kaisol, kloimer besada. So he's saying clearly what you just said. Aval b'beis hakisei, it's called beis hakisei, a house, a latrine. Shibabayis ain't kaped. You never have to be, and that, by the way, we pass it that way. You're not concerned about that. And came Peter Shadash, and the Rashba, and the Toisves. And then he concludes, Upasku kala paiskim kerabakiva. And by the way, kerabakiva for both sides. Mitzad echad, that nowadays, if a person is relieving oneself out there in the field, if you know the directions, not to relieve yourself, Mizrach Maidev. Only Litzudadim. On the other hand, not to be worried about it when you have a home, as we normally have today. And let's move on to the next topic. Daf Tzadik Daled Amud Aleph says the Gemara. And now this is really a Braisa, obviously, reporting a Tana, that Amar Rabbi Akiva. And guys, we have this in Brachas, Bavli, Daf Samach Beis. That Nichnasti Acha Rabbi Yeshua Lidas Hamais. Now that we learned Hilchos Beis Hakisei, so when Rabbi Yeshua needed to relieve himself, Rabbi Akiva went after him. Another thing, where did he go after him? As we just learned in the Charedim, as we just learned in Rabbi Akiva itself, it wasn't in a bathroom, because we just learned that in the bathroom proper. So l'chreira, the fact that one of the things that he saw was that he about the direction, it means that Rabbi Yeshua, they were out there in the field. He walked away from people, so there should be privacy. And Rabbi Akiva wanted to see. And I just want to quote the words in the Babli, that Ben Azai, one of his Talmidim, his name was really Shimon, Ben Azai told Rabbi, he turned around and he tells Ben Azai, At Khan, he asked the Ponecha, the Rabbah, you have such a Azus Panim, I'm your teacher, what are you doing? To which Ben Azai responded, Toirehi, Vilil Moidani Tzarech. And as we had in the Gemara, Benegay other Talmidim, that they went in their Rebbe's bedroom under their bed to see what's going on. No privacy. You had by the 770, there were Bachrim that bugged the Rebbe's room. That's all this. Okay, so very good. So now everyone wants to hear. Amaro Isa. Was it Rabbi Akiva went after Rabbi Yeshua. Ben Azai tells him, what are you doing? He says, no, I'm doing good. And by the way, later Ben Azai went running after Rabbi Akiva. Obviously. So Amar Lohen, so Rabbi whatever, he had a report. Rabbi Akiva had a thing. Amar Lohem, he told him many things. Number one, Re'isiv Yosef Tzidei Klapei Mayit. Tzidei, his side. In other words, like that, it must be in the field. He went after Rabbi Yeshua. I saw how Rabbi Yeshua was careful not to be in the direction of Mizrach Maidev, not to be in that direction. Because then one side of you is exposed to the Maidev. Very good. It's a perpendicular. In other words, not Mizrach Maidev, either Tzafan or Darim. And according to the latter Braisa, that's what we just learned, doesn't matter. The first Braisa says not even towards the south. We don't go with that. Either north or south. But the fact that he saw that his teacher, Rabbi Yeshua, made that effort means it was dafka. He says, mamash, like me. That's how he paskin. They were not near the Makom Hamikdash. They were not in that Soifim Vilifnim. It was after the Churban Abayis, but they were still careful. He saw his teacher, Rabbi Yeshua, being careful. Number two, that he did not expose himself until he properly sat down. That's for sneers. He exposed his body the last moment needed. Another din. Let's learn pshat that he did not sit down until he wiped the seat clean. Whatever they had over there, they had little steindalach. They had rocks over there. They would crouch on something. So he cleaned the place. Now, I want you to know that in the Babli, when we learned this, that we touched it there differently. And that's something to do with Kishuv, that when there was some manipulation that they did to their body part to somehow open it up in order for them to relieve themselves better. And people that practice Kishuv would do that, but we don't have to be concerned with doing that. And he did that. And final, that after he relieved himself, he only wiped himself with the left hand. What did they have? They did not have toilet paper, but whatever they used, why did he not use the right hand? The Torah was given in the right hand, right? We tied the tefillin on with the right hand. When we write stam, we write it with the right hand, and even eating, most people eat with the right hand, so we give cover to the right hand by not using it for that action. Now, as we quoted in the Babli, that when Benazai saw Rabbi Akiva running after Rabbi Yeshua, he criticized him, and Rabbi Akiva defended himself. He says, Torah he. So Benazai did the same thing. So Af Shema Benazai, Hoya Omer came. That what? That at a later time. Nichnas Niachar Rabbi Akiva. Lirois Esamaisa. And Amru Loy, and they asked Benazai Maro Isa. And now you see the beauty of Shimush, of Mesoides. He did exactly the same thing. Amar Lahem, Reisa Yoshev Vitsidoi Klapamai. Only his son, not his face, like we said before. And also the same. Beautiful. Says the Gemara Tani, we learned in a Braisa, more reverence that needs to be shown to the Makam HaMikdash. A person is not allowed to enter the entire Temple Mount complex, bimin olei, with his shoes on his feet, and going barefoot. If you went barefoot prior, make sure that you wash the dust off your feet. Nor are you allowed to go with money tied into his kerchief. Nor let's go with the pshat that we're speaking about, a money belt. Don't go with your money belt tied on the outside of your clothing, because then it gives the appearance that you're going there to transact business. In other words, you can have today a wallet. We're going to Mashiach, have it in your pocket the way we have it today. But when you have, what do they call these little belts that people wear when they travel? A money belt, but some of them, there's another name I heard from my wife. So that okay, what do you need? That you need that because you need to show your passport. You want to have what you need right away available, safe and available. That is not something that you do in the Harabais. There's no business that you're doing. You don't have to show any documentations. You want to have stuff on you, put it away, Betsina. And my tam in what's the source? So according to Pasuk in Koheles, what does it say? Shemar raglacham, kasher telach el beis o elikim. Guard your legs. Guard your legs means not to have shoes on, nor to have dust on your feet prior to entering. Now, Rabbi Yosef, I'll tell you. It says, and now we're going to the story of Mordechai and Esther. When Mordechai put on the sack, so he only came ad lifnei Sharamelech. He didn't enter, even though that he had the permit to enter. He was a minister. And why not? It says explicitly, Ki ein lavoi el Sharamelech, when you're wearing a levush sak. So Amar, so this is, if you have that verse, Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda says, im lifnei lechos rucha kain, if in going in front of us far stunken king, we're not only speaking about the lowliness of Achashverosh, Melech Basar Vadam, but since it's Achashverosh, we don't say a Basar Vadam, we say a Tipat Lalechas Rucha. You have to show reverence. You're not showing reverence to the person, you're showing reverence to the position. Alachas Kama Vekama, Lifnei Shar HaMokayim. Maybe there's another nuance here. The other nuance is that I get it not to enter the Beis HaMikdash. I think that's what he's adding, in the Beis HaMikdash. What about the Harabais? So maybe that's the raya from the story of Mordechai and Esther, that ad lifnei shar, even when you're coming to the gate of the palace, not the palace. Mistama, there was a shar, Like has to be. You go today in England to the Great Chacham over there, right? You Westminster. You have the Shad, and then between the Shad and the palace, Hosto Agansa city. They don't have it in Miami. Oh, Lachaim. Let's go ahead. Now, weiter the Braise continues. Lo yasenu kapandaria. Not to use the entire Harabayas as a shortcut. And then the Braise concludes, and spitting on Harabayas is prohibited from a Kal V'Chomer. Now, the Mishnah did not speak out the Kal V'Chomer. We read it in the Charedim. Now you see where the Charedim got it from. Here the Braisa is normally more elaborate than the Mishnah, spells it out. Ma im ni'ila shehi shel kavod. Right? Taking off your shoes. You can't say that wearing shoes is something disgusting. It's not. Elama, like I mentioned, people that have more culture, they have the shoes taken off before you enter a home. It's more about, if you give more covet. Don't bring your dirty boots into my house. Spitting is something much more disrespectful. So now that we already proved from the pasuk in Koheles, Shmoy raglecha kasher telech al beis Elokim, and we teach that means taking off your shoes, washing the dust off your feet. At oimed, that it's atur. So the kikam, spitting, we're speaking about spitting out phlegm, which is a bezayin like kolchchen that is not allowed, and like we mentioned, not only not in beis Elokim, not allowed on the entire har habayis. Now, just to speak out what we spoke out here amongst ourselves after we pressed the pause or the stop on the machines, that the kika that is prohibited is the kika of phlegm. And even there are many halachas. I mean, it's not something that is shaykh to many people, but if a person has phlegm in the mouth in the middle of davening, so it's not a blanket statement, never. There are times that the derech kavod, you turn around, you put it in your kerchief, but all of this is a rekika of phlegm. In contrast to our minig Chabad, that when we say Oleinu, and when we say the word Shehem Ishtachmim Lehavel Vilorik, and as it says in the Hayom Yom, that when you speak, your mouth is producing saliva, and we want to show that we want to be so distant from Avodah Zarah that when we speak about Avodah Zarah, the spittle that is created in our mouth is not something that we even want to swallow, and we spit that out. That is not the type of not respectful rikika that we're talking about. That's something that we do, and it's a minig. However, the Rebbe was careful that whenever he would spit during Oleinu, depending on where he was standing, because when the Rebbe davened upstairs, since the Rebbe considered the place of the Frierdiker Rebbe to be the Frierdiker Rebbe's place, the Rebbe would sit to the left of the Aron Kodesh. It means the Aron Kodesh was to the Rebbe's right when he was upstairs. The Rebbe would put his hand on the right side of his mouth every time when he would spit by Oleinu, to separate his mouth from the Aron Kodesh. Also reverence, that's to the Aron Kodesh. And when the Rebbe was downstairs, when he was on the right of the Aron Kodesh, which is really the place of the Rebbe, so then he would put his hand on the left side. But that's Lefnim Yishuras Adin. Okay, let's go right. And the Bachrim had that whole machlokes when I was in yeshiva. What should you do? Should you copy the Rebbe, meaning put your hand, we stood in the back, so then we should put our hand between the mouth on the Aron Kodesh, or we should put it exactly the way the Rebbe put it. Doesn't matter voodoo taste. The Rebbe put his hand to his right, you put it to the right. The Rebbe put it to the left, you put it to the left. Okay, beautiful. If we would do all other things nice and this, that could be beautiful. Problem is that that's what we did. That was the big thing. When it comes to the basics, yeah. Anyways, that's life. So as we learned out in the Mishnah, that number one, they didn't say Baruch Ata Hashem. They said Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael Min Ha'olam. And in the beginning of Vayesheni, Ezra, because of the minim that did not believe in Tchias HaMesim, added Min Ha'olam Ba'ad Ha'olam, just to know the words, not Olam Hazan, Olam Haba, what people normally think about Olam Haba. Olam Haba here means Olam Atchiyah, that Baruch Hashem, that God will be drawn down. Not only is he being drawn down now through our Avodah, Torah mitzvahs, right? It's Mamshech Kedusha Lomata Dira B'Tachtoinim, but also in the next by Tchias HaMesim. So now a couple of details that we didn't learn. Number one, Tana, even though we spoke it out of the Charedim, the Mishnah did not speak about how people responded to it. It didn't answer Amen. What did everyone say in the place of Amen? They would say, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusai La'olam Va'ed. And one of the basic classic reasons given to this phenomena is that now outside the Beis Hamikdash, when we say God's name, even Shem Hamafoidash, we are not allowed to pronounce it. We say Shem Adnai. For that, people say Amen. Masha Enken in the Beis Hamikdash, they would pronounce the name the way it's written. And I want you to know that's a Shem Hamafoidash. When you learn about certain moments where the Kohen Gadol would say Shem Ab, even when he didn't do that, they would actually read in the Beis Hamikdash, they would read Yud Kei Vav Kei properly, the way it's written. For that, you have to give more covet. Amen is not enough. That's the basic reason. So they would say, "Ooh, you said God's name, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusei La'olam Va'ed." Now, continues the Braisa Menayin Shelo Yehoyu Oinen Amen B'Mikdash. How do you know that? Talmud Leimer says in Nehemiah that Kumu Baruchu Es Hashem Elokeichem, and that's the source of this addition that they made in the beginning of Bayesheni. Min ha'olam va'ad ha'olam, and the hemshich of that pasuk is Vivarchu Shem Kavodecha, Baruch Shem Kavod. You have to mention the kavod of God's name, and you don't have the Shem Kavod in Amen. Furthermore, says the Braisa Minayin Al Kol Bracha Bracha. Maybe if there's such an elaborate response, maybe it doesn't need to be done at the end of every single bracha. Maybe like when they said Shemona Esrei, at the end of all of the brachas, then there was one response for all of it. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusei La'olam Va'ed. It wasn't that way. It was mamish like by us. Now, every time a bracha is said, Baruch Ata Hashem, Choinen Ados, people say Amen. Every time you answer that, how do you know that? So go in that pasuk in the Nehemiah. It's the hemshech of that pasuk. It says over there, Umereimam al kol beracha usehila al kol beracha. That's what it says. It says Kumu baruch Hashem Elokeichem le'olam. Then it says weiter, Vivarchu Shem Kavodecha Umereimam al kol beracha. Every time there's a bracha, we will exalt God, and we exalted God by saying Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusei La'olam. Furthermore, says the Mishnah that v'oy diskinu, that was the final topic of the Mishnah. She'iyah Adam Shoyel. Whenever they would greet their fellow, Shoyel means to greet, they would evoke God's name. They would say Hashem properly, Adnai Imachem. And nowadays we say Shalom Aleichem, and Shalom is Hashem Hashem. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yeshua. Which Rabbi Yeshua? The one that lived in the Dorim. That I want you to know that Shloisha Devarim goes through based in Shalom Maton, Vehiskin based in Shalom Mailam Imohem, the Elohein. And these are the following three. Number one is Cherma Shal Yerichai. So we're not going in the same time, even though normally when we say Gozru based in Shalom Maton, we're speaking about the Sanhedrin. Yeah. One was, Yeshua and his Sanhedrin. When we conquered Yerichai, Yeshua made an oath that no one is allowed to take any of the spoils for themselves. And that was something that was very difficult to do. It was actually difficult to keep, as we see that someone broke it. And because of that, in the second conquest, in the city of Ai, there was a negative consequence. And Yeshua found out that's because people broke the first oath. Now, you can argue, why even make such an oath? People are going to war. Everyone was planning to give from their spoils a part to the Beis Hamikdash, a part to the Kohanim, a part to Tzedakah. But to make such a ban that people go to war and no one is allowed to keep anything, one might have thought it's too much of a decree. So this was not initiated in above. But once we decided over here, they were masking.
How do we know the heavenly court? How did we know the heavenly court agreed with them?
We'll see in a moment. The Gemara is going to prove from each one, because that's what the Malach told Yeshua. We'll see in a moment when he came to him after the disaster at night. The next thing is Megillas Esther. Megillas Esther, the whole takana of adding basically a Yom Tov and a mitzvah could appear like Bal Tosef. Now we know it's not, because we're not adding it as one of the Tayyag Doirais. It's only one of the 7 Derabanan. Nevertheless, one might have thought that you can say the same thing with Chanukah. Eina Chanami. Chanukah comes after Purim. Yeah. Purim came first. So maybe you would think that such a rabbinic decree of making a Yom Tov with making a Megillah, with all of the dinim and the mitzvahs, but they were moide. And the third is this topic, being allowed to use Hashem's name, not in the context of davening or learning, but in greeting your fellow Jew is a chiddush. Like we learned when we learned the Charedim was quoting the Bar Tanura, and the other Rashi says the same thing in Barachas, that it appears that it's something prohibited. And yet they were masking. Ushe'elo sholem b'shem. Now, the Gemara is going to say, like Kevin says, how do you know that God was maskim? How do we know that? Because Chata Yisrael v'gam avru as birisi. Right, this is what the Malach told Yoshua as to why was there a loss in I. So because Chata Yisrael v'gam avru as birisi. Now hold on. It says Berisi, this is a Malach speaking about God. They broke the covenant. The covenant was this oath not to take, no one is allowed to take spoils. Now, the Gemara is saying, the Malach didn't say, Chata Yisrael v'avru al brischa. No, God says, on my covenant, here Kevan, Elam Alamed and Achanami. Yoshua initiated, Ubezdina. Sheskimu Bezdin, Shalmaila imahem. The next Megillah says that, how do you know that God was Mekabalit? Because when it says in Megillah says that Kimbu v'Kiblu, and if you have a Megillah, the word Kiblu, the Ksiv is without a Vav. So the literal is that the people were confirmed and accepted. We. But Rav Amar, that why is it that the Ksiv of the word v'Kiblu is without a Vav, which allows it to be read v'Kibel in the singular? Kibel goes on God, that the Oivishter, God accepted this as a yontif. Malamed sheiskimu, for us to add mitzvahs derabbanan, particularly Megillah says. And the third, ushe'ela shalom b'shem. Now we're going to go back to the psukkah that we had in the Mishnah. And first of all, we see that v'hinei boyas b'me beis lachem. And when he saw the harvesters, he told them Hashem imachem. Umenayin sheiskimu beis and shalmayla imohem Talmud leimer. Again, another pasuk that we said in the Mishnah, maybe we do have it in the Yerushalmi, maybe we didn't have it, we definitely read it in when we read the Charedim, Vayera Elav Malach Hashem, that's the Gidoin, that's not in the story over here, but the fact that the Malach told Gidoin, Hashem Imcha Gibarachayel, even though we rejected this to be the proof, but that's a proof enough to know that God was masking that that's how one should be greeted. So going forward, when God sends a shliach, in this case a malach, how did the malach greet Gideon? Hashem imachem. Now that we mentioned the three connected to our Mishnah, the Gemara adds, Rab Avim b'shem Reb Shua ben Levi. I want you to know that there's a fourth. There's something that we came up with, and God is masking, and that is maisros. And this maisros doesn't only mean the legal maisros of the tithing of the produce that grows in Eretz Yisrael. This actually refers in the broader term of maisros regarding maisa ksafim, of giving tzedakah, giving at least 10%, in which God says, and as he quotes over here, the Charedim, ubechanuni na bezois im lo yeftach lochem es harubas hashamayim v'harikoisi lochem bracha ad bli dai. Now, what does ubechanuni mean? Ubechanuni means test me. So we were the ones that said to Danny that we are allowed to test God with this. Normally, we're not allowed to test God. When it comes to this, we are supposed to, and God was masking by saying, yeah, I agree with you, come and test me. Shenemar, as it says in Pasuk in Malachi, that Revios HaMaiseh, and that the hemshach of the Pasuk in Malachi is like we just read, that God is saying, I want you to test me, and you're going to see that I will I not respond to you by opening the windows of the heaven. Now, what does it mean, ad b'lidai? Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Shimon, Barba, in the name of Rabbi Yechanan says that davar she efshir loy meloy dai hu bracha. What bracha is this referring to? Not the money in your account, but it means rain. How is rain, and rain is so needed when you have the whole economy used to be agriculture, and you need rain for that. It's interesting, as the Mara Fulda reminds us of, that the only thing the Gemara says you're not allowed to daven for is al roiv kshamim. He quotes the Mara Fulda from Gemara Matainis. In other words, if it's raining a lot, it's very good for the people of the fields, but it's a big inconvenience. So this is something that a person can, everyone can daven for their own thing. The only thing that I'm not allowed to, I can't say, listen, for me, I had enough rain, or I don't own fields, or I'm going on a trip. We are told, don't tell God not to give rain. That's the pshat. In other words, you will be that for which you're not allowed to say enough. For which you're not allowed to say enough. In other words, you give meiser, there's going to be rain. That's one pshat. However, Rabbi Rechia, Rabbi Chelboi, Rabbi Abba, Bar Iloi, Yoshem Rav, they learn pshat, the pshat that we're more familiar with. No, it means that God is going to give you all of the brachas, not only rain. He's going to give you all that you need. And you know how much? more than you want. Yivlu sifsoisecha meloymar dayenu barachas dayenu barachas. Stam lahoyer, guys. I want you to know Yivlu sifsoisecha means it doesn't mean literally your lips will be worn out. The literal means that's what it means. Literally, it means you'll get tired. You'll have enough. You'll tell God, okay, God, it's great, it's good, and God won't even listen to you. He'll give you more, and you'll be tired not by asking for brachas, but by saying enough. But the literal is sheyivlu. Yivlu means it's going to be worn out. So the people ask the kasha that the word die, right? If you have hey motzoy sapeh, when you say die, you're not using your lips at all. So how does your lips get burnt out? The answer is that you're not going to say die. Die is a short form. Dayenu berachos. There you go. That's the answer to this kasha. How good is that? We learned the Bible. We were asking that question. Amen. Now, the source that the Mishnah ended up bringing for what? Maybe there's no proof from Boyaz. Maybe Boyaz el to the yid, So it says in Koheles al tavus kizakna imecha, and the Mishnah made the drasha doesn't only mean don't shame your mother even though she's old. No, it means instead of imecha we read umasecha. Don't shame the elders of your nation when they do things. It's not stam. Boyaz's minhag of when he would greet people, Yidden, he would evoke God's name. He knew what he was doing. Now we're going to learn other drashas from the same pasuk. Amar Rabbi Yosi Barbun that im nisyashnu divrei Torah beficha. If Torah became aged in your mouth, which means that you really know it well. Here, age meaning a person who's older, they know. So there are certain parts of Torah that are new to us, so we didn't fully chap it yet. So we enjoy reviewing it. People don't enjoy reviewing it because they want to know it better. But there comes a point that you learned it enough, you mamish know it. So you would think, now that I know it, I don't have to review it. Don't have that attitude. Al tivza aleim. Even though you know it, keep on reviewing it. And my tama, that's the source. Va'al tavus kizakna imecha. Here, imecha is Torah. Just because you know it, don't shame it by going away from it. Keep on chazening the Torah that you already know. Amar Abzeira. Another pshat that in this dakna umasecha here means in the negative that if the Yidden they get old, in this context, old is a negative. So when it comes to certain mitzvahs, they're slacking off. Like older people that in certain areas they're slacking off. So we have a responsibility. Amoid v'gadra, get up there and repair the breach. For example, Kishain Sha'ase Elkanah, right? The husband of Chana and of Penina, father of Shmuel, that what? During his time, people slacked off by going aliyas leregel. When he saw that, when he went, not only did he go, he did it in a way that would inspire the others also to do aliyas leregel. And that's the meaning of the pasuk. Va'Allah va'ish hahu me'iroi va'Allah ha'ish hahu. Guys, don't turn the amid yet. Look inside the Charedim, 8 lines before the bottom of the amid. He says, beautiful. Vayal. Vayal. By the way, Vayal there wasn't to Yerushalmi, it was to Mishkan Shiloi. But the normal lashon should have been that Elkanah went up. No, it doesn't say that Vayal. It says Ve'Allah. So why does it say Ve'Allah? Says the Charedim, that's the darshan. Put different vowels. Va'alei. Va'alei means he went up in a way where he inspired others to go. Meaning, he didn't go straight from his city to Shiloi. He took the long route. He walked through many cities and villages, and he made a big tararam. People asked him, "What are you doing?" He says, "What are you doing? I'm going to Aliyah Sarregel. It's Yom Tiv." In other words, he behaved in a way, berabim, in order to inspire the many people to do what he's doing. That's the way you inspire people, by leading by example. But to lead by example, you have to be seen. Okay, now the Mishnah concluded with the pasuk Daf Tzadik Dalad Amen Beis that Eis Lasois Lashem Hefeiru Toira Secha, and as we had Rav Nassim, was Mesaras Karoi, he switched the pasuk around by reading it that Hefeiru Torah Secha, that one is allowed in our Mishnah to do that which appears to be nullifying the Torah by stam using God's name. Why are you allowed to do it? Because this is what God wants. Says the Gemara, Rab Chilki, Abishem Rab Simen learns another pshat. That what is ace? Ace means only from time to time. That only learning Torah on occasion, not every single day. Amal amal. This is nullifying the covenant. And what's the source? That's the source. That a feidu Torah secha. How is one mefer the Torah? David HaMelech was not speaking about someone who's breaking the mitzvahs. You're mefer the Torah simply by only learning Torah from time to time, and not, as we call, being koiveya itim, making it something fixed. We learned in a brayso that imro isa sabriya shenesiyashu yedem en Torah. You see, people are not clinging on the way they should. So you should know, amoid vischazik b'ma'oid. It's on you. The ata mekabel schar kulam, and my tama firu Torah secha. So then it's your time to act for God. Eis lasis lashem. Another pshat continues the brayso hilal azakanoy oimer the shad de menachshin. Now we're going to learn pshat like the Charedim learns it. Actually, his girs is b'shah shamachnisin, which means when you have people are not making the effort, says the Charedim, to be marbitz Torah to their talmidim. When you don't have enough Torah teachers, then badar, distribute your wisdom. In other words, even though there is a person that is not fully knowledgeable enough to be the teacher, he really still needs to be a Talmud, which is all of us. But no, don't spend your time learning for you. If there aren't enough teachers, that's the beautiful bishad, the machanshin, the machnashin. When the real teachers are gathered in, you have to go out. However, ubishad the mevadrin, when the people are distributing their wisdom, so what should you do? Then kinoish. But if you're not yet an ish, so then when there is an ish, then let the ish do the talking, and you then chaparan and you learn. Because you have to know when to be the teacher, when to be the student. Another v'chein of when to be a Talmud, when to be a teacher. And that's a very big rule, guys, that you know when you can succeed in being a teacher, when people want to be a Talmud. You can't force it down other people. So if people are hakoil semechem ba, then badar, then distribute. You don't know enough. You're not the most eloquent. It's not on you. It's about if the people want, they're going to be makabel. But the imlav, if the people are not in the mood, then that's another big chacham of a teacher. What's a good teacher? He walks into the classroom. If right now the talmidim are not interested, go outside and do something fun with them. You have to know when to teach. Then kenoish. And I think all of this is connected to ace. You have to know when is the right time to teach and when is not the right time to teach. Amar Rabbi Elazar, ma hatina kazeh, sarich linak b'chol shah shabayim. Again, the ace means the whole time. Kach kol adam Yisrael. It's not a tinnik. Today, an American needs to nash the whole time. Sarich liga b'toira b'chol shah shabayim. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yoina b'shem Rabbi Yisi ben Gizira. That's his name. That kol pitetaya bishin. All chattery is bad. People just schmoozing. It's never going to lead to something of content, aside of the fact that it in itself is bittul Torah. However, it's called a shmooz. It's called a sicha. In other words, a sicha doiraisa tovin. So therefore, you're going to end up learning the whole time. Kol kidevaya tovin. Now that we're using these expressions, kidevaya means lying. Lying is a good thing because lying brings peace. We're speaking about being meshana mipnei darkei shalom. So do we accept people deviating from the pure truth for the sake of peace? Yes, in one exception. Deviating from the truth when you're learning Torah is the worst thing in the world. So if a person is a Talmud and they understand it 99% and they have Rahmanas on the teacher, I got it, that's called lying. Don't do that. When it comes to the Torah, there has to be pure emes. Moshe emes v'toirasa emes. Says the Gemara, Omar Rab Shimon ben Lakish, Megillas Chasidim, Matzu Kasuv, Yoim Ta'azveni. Torah says, you desert me only for one day, but you know what will be the result? You're my Yomim as Veka. We will be, really, I will depart you for 2 days. Now hold on, it doesn't mean, like we said, if we walk away one day, the Torah will depart us for 2 days. But as we spoke on in the intro, if I, God forbid, one day not learn Torah, means I departed for one day. The Torah is like a being, it's a living being. The Torah says, you're walking away from me, I'm walking away from you. So then if I walk away towards the east one day and the Torah walks away toward the west, so then we're 2 days apart. And what is that? That's a mashal. The Shnayim Shiyatzu, 2 people went on a journey. Echad b'Tiveria ve'echad b'Tzipoiden. I'm sorry, they came from 2 different locations. Upogo zegazeh b'chada mashkeno. So even though they came from 2 different places, but if they met, lo yispiku lifre zemizeh at shehalach zemil v'zemul. So in other words, if you don't begin together, so you only met, so then if you're going to keep on, then if you'll stay together, good. But if you keep on going on your journeys, you're going to walk a mill, and the other one is walking a mill, and you guys did not come from the same direction, which means you're walking towards different directions. So it takes 18 minutes to walk a mill. After 18 minutes, what will be the distance between you? 2 million. Another mashal. When there's a woman who's waiting for the man, as long as she thinks that he's coming to marry her, she sits and waits for him. If he will decide not to marry her, she'll feel it. She won't wait. She'll walk away. She'll go and marry someone else. So that's the importance of Eis, Lasis, Lashem, that the biggest Meifir is not learning Torah every single time, every single moment. Says the Gemara Vaita, Toni, B'Shem Rabbi Meir. Ein l'cha echad miYisrael, she'eino oisa meya mitzvahs b'chol yoim. And many people are goydis over here, like the Marafulda, meya brachas. We are familiar with the expression of meya brachas. And where do we have 100 brachas? Between reading the Shema. And as we began this Masechta, that the Chachamim were Masakin, that with Shema comes brachas. So this is even before we had Psukkah de Zimra, right? Before we had the 15 Birchais HaShachar, just from the Shema and Birchaisel. V'oichel pitoi u'mevarech l'fanav al-achrel. U'lohoyer, guys, I want to throw something out there. Mikan, bezoines before davening, like in Lubavitch. Right? And then u'mespalel shloisha pamim shul shmayna esrei. And v'chayzer v'oiser shar mitzvahs. And every time in Baruch Halel, you all have made. You add it up together, you're going to have 100 brachos. Mo Hashem doidis, right? Mo Hashem meyam. Chen oida meir oimer. Ein l'chadam Yisrael, she'ein ha-mitzvahs makifas oisoi, which are tefillin b'roishoi, utfillin b'zroyoi, u'mezuzah b'pischoi, and arba tzitzios b'talisoi. Are makifan oisoi. In other words, we have around us 7 mitzvahs. What are the 7 mitzvahs? Tefillin, 2, 4 tzitzios, 4 and 2 is 6, and the mezuzah. What is Rav Meir trying to say? I understand, and this is very similar to the Bar Mitzvah Maimer, that we just came off the topic. You have to learn Torah every single moment. Every single moment. Not everyone learns Torah every single moment. I think what Rav Meir is trying to say, okay, but we are connected because we say 100 brachas every day. We are connected because we are surrounded with the mitzvahs. And Usha David Omar, Sheva by Yoim Hiladati Chal Mishretzim Kach. And that's the 7th. The Chenu Omer, that Choyne Malach Hashem Lereov, and he rescues us. So we're being rescued, the way I understand, from some negative consequence of going by one moment without learning Torah, because when we're not learning Torah, we're busy, we're making brachas, we're doing mitzvahs. Now, going back to David HaMelech, what happened by him was that when he went into the Merchatz, and all of a sudden, he understood the great protection we have by being surrounded by these 7 mitzvahs. In the Beis HaMerchatz, you don't have a mezuzah. In the Beis HaMerchatz, nish talis and nish tefillin. So ra'atzmei aroim, naked from the mitzvahs. Omar, oi, li, sha'ani aroim in ha-mitzvahs. Aber, kivin shehibet b'milah shaloi. Then he began to praise God that we're never disconnected. And a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. Why you have a bris milah? And that's the meaning of Lamanatzeich Halashminis Mismar LeDavid. Beautiful. So we end brachas. It's amazing how everything goes back. Yeah, we're coming off the Eis Lasses Lashem and the importance of being connected to Torah the whole time, but we came back to the power of brachas. And finally, Amar Rabbi Lazar b'Shem Rabbi Chanina. We're going to read out these words, God willing, tomorrow. I just want to say the following: that if you open up a brachas Bavli, so you're going to see that the siyum over there begins the same way, right? In the Bavli, you have Al Tikra Bonayich Ela Boy Noyach. You don't have this in the Yerushalmi. You don't have this in the Yerushalmi. Aside of the fact that in the Bavli you have Shalom Rav, he Shalom Achelech, right? Lamana Chayvereyoy, Hashem Islam Yiten. I'm not even talking about that. That we don't have over here. There has to be a reason for that. But even in this Chazal, that's concluding the Masechta, speaking about the power of the peace that Talmidei Chachamim bring in the world, that we are the ones that are Marbim Shalom and Al Tikra Bonayach Ela Boy Noyach. I want to learn the last Pnei Moshe that we can read. We'll read the Gemara inside, God willing, tomorrow. So the Pnei Moshe is emphasizing that the siyum in the Yerushalmi is not an abbreviated siyum of the Bavli. It's not that. You would think, yeah, the Gemara here, we're more brief. So we don't have to say, Al Tikra Bonayach Ela Boy Noyach. No, it's a different limud. He emphasizes that. He says, how do we know from B'chol Bonayach Limudei Hashem that Talmidei Chacham Amar B'Shalom Ha'olam? Not because you should read it Boy Noyach, it's Gavaldik Dani. Bonayach Habeis is Mayuter. In other words, the pasuk could have said, V'chol Bonayach Limudei Hashem, V'Rav Shalom. Who's V'Rav Shalom? It's self-understood. You just said Bonayach. Why are we repeating? It's the repetition. Not Al Tikra Elo. Hilkach Darish Bey, the Altamei Chachamim Ka'amar. And I want to say right now, B'Kitzur like this, that how do you define a Talmud Chacham? What's the definition of a Talmud Chacham? In the Bavli, you'll learn a lot of Torah. Of course, you're God fearing. In the Yerushalmi, the definition of a Talmud Chacham is someone who knows that every Jew is God's son. The Torah of the Baal Shem. That's because if we understand that v'chol banayach, it's a big difference. That in itself brings shalom ba'olam. The appreciation, the Talmud Chacham, the one who knows that a Yid is a Yid simply because you are banayach Hashem. That is how and that's now before Mashiach, the peace that we need will come from the ultimate value that we give to our fellow Jew, independent of how much Torah they know, independent of how much mitzvahs are they yet keeping. V'chol banayach. Beautiful. Okay, got Mazel Tov, Chavre, and
Mazel Tov.
See you guys, Masechtas Peya, Monday morning.